All right. Chapter 2. Prediction confirmed. Another verification. A third verification of prediction. 3 times in spite of its long-established sobriety, the Journal of the Franklin Institute, volumes 106 and 107, reels with an astronomer's accelerations. He might exalt and indulge himself, and would be no affair of ours, and, in fact, we'd like to see everybody happy, perhaps, but it is out of these 3 chanted clarities by Professor Pliny Chase that we materialize our opinion that, for so far as methods and strategies are concerned, no particular differences can be noted between astrologers and astronomers, and that both represent engulfment in dark ages. Lord Bacon pointed out that the astrologers had squirmed into prestige and emolument by shooting at marks, disregarding their misses and recording their hits with unseemly advertisement. When in August 1878, Professor Swift and Professor Watson said that during an eclipse of the sun they had seen 2 luminous bodies that might be planets between Mercury and the sun, Professor Chase announced that 5 years before he had made a prediction, and that it had been confirmed by the positions of these bodies 3 times. In capital letters, he screamed and announced, according to one's sensitiveness of or prejudices, that the new planets were in the exact positions of his calculations. Professor Chase wrote that before his time there had been 2 great instances of astronomic calculation confirmed: the discovery of Neptune and the discovery of the asteroidal belt, a claim that is disingenuously worded. If by mathematical principles or by any other definite principles there has ever been one great or little instance of astronomic discovery by means of calculations, confusion must destroy us in the introductory position that we take, or expose our irresponsibility and vitiate all that follows, that our data are oppressed by a tyranny of false announcements, that there never has been an astronomic discovery other than the observational or the accidental. In the story of the heavens, Sir Robert Ball's opinion of the discovery of Neptune is that it is a triumph unparalleled in the annals of science. He lavishes the great astronomer Leverrier, buried for months in profound meditations. The dramatic moment, Leverrier rises from his calculations and points to the sky. Lo, there a new planet is found. My desire is not so much to agonize over the single fraudulencies or delusions as to typify the means by which the science of astronomy has established and maintained itself. According to Leverrier, there was a planet external to Uranus. According to Hansen, there were 2. According to Airy, doubtful if there were 1. One planet was found, so calculated Leverrier in his profound meditations. Suppose 2 had been found, confirmation of the brilliant computations by Hansen. None, the opinion of the great astronomer Sir George Airy. Leverrier calculated that the hypothetic planet was at a distance from the sun within the limits of 35 to 37.9 times the Earth's distance from the sun. The new planet was found in a position and said to be 30 times this Earth's distance from the sun. The discrepancy was so great that, in the United States, astronomers refused to accept that Neptune had been discovered by means of calculation. See publications as the American Journal of Science of the period. Upon August 29th, 1849, Dr. Babinet read to the French Academy a paper in which he showed that by the observations of 3 years the revolution of Neptune would have to be placed at 165 years. Between the limits of 207 and 233 years was the period that Leverrier had calculated. Simultaneously in England, Adams had calculated. Upon September 2nd, 1846, after he had, for at least a month, been charting the stars in the region towards which Adams had pointed, Professor Challis wrote to Sir George Airy that his work would occupy his time for 3 more months. This indicates the extent of the region towards which Adams had pointed. the discovery of the asteroids, or in Professor Chase's not very careful language, the discovery of the asteroidal belt as deduced from Bode's law. We learned that Baron von Zach had formed a society of 24 astronomers to search in accordance with Bode's law for Jupiter and Mars. The astronomers had organized, dividing the zodiac into 24 zones, assigning each zone to an astronomer. They searched. They found none. They found not one asteroid. 7 or 800 are now known. Philosophical Magazine 12-62, the Piazzi, the discoverer of the first asteroid, had not been searching for a hypothetic body as deduced from Bode's law, but upon an investigation of his own, had been charting stars in the constellation Taurus, night of January 1st, 1801. He noticed a light that he thought had moved, and with his mind a blank, so far as asteroids and brilliant deductions were concerned, announced that he had discovered a comet. As an instance of the crafty way in which some astronomers now tell the story, Sir Robert Ball's Story of the Heavens, page 230. The organization of the astronomers of Lilienthal, but never a hint of Piazzi, was not one of them. The search for the small planet was soon rewarded by a success that had rendered the evening of the first day of the 19th century memorable in astronomy. Ball tells of Piazzi's charting of the stars and makes it appear that Piazzi had charted the stars as a means of finding asteroids deductively, rewarded soon by success, whereas Piazzi had never heard of such a search and did not know an asteroid when he saw one. This laborious and accomplished astronomer had organized an ingenious system of exploring the heavens, which was eminently calculated to discriminate a planet among the starry host. At length he was rewarded by a success which amply compensated him for all his toil. Professor Chase. These two great instances not of mere discovery, but of discovery by means of calculation, according to him, now the subject of his supposition that he, too, could calculate triumphantly. The verification depended upon the accuracy of Professor Swift and Professor Watson in recording the positions of the bodies that they had announced. Sidereal Messenger 6-84, Professor Colbert, superintendent of Dearborn Observatory, leader of the party of which Professor Swift was a member, says that the observations by Swift and Watson agreed, because Swift had made his observations agree with Watson's. The accusation is not that Swift had falsely announced the discovery of two unknown bodies, but that his precise determining of positions had occurred after Watson's determinations had been published. Popular Astronomy 7-13. Professor Asaph Hall writes that several days after the eclipse, Professor Watson told him that he had seen a luminous body near the sun, and that his declaration that he had seen two unknown bodies was not made until after Swift had been heard from. Perched upon two delusions, Perched upon two delusions, Professor Chase crowded his false raptures. The unknown bodies, whether they ever had been in the orbit of his calculations or not, were never seen again. So it is our expression that hosts of astronomers calculate and calculate, calculate and calculate and calculate, and that when one of them does point within 600 million miles by conventional measurements of something that is found, he is the Leverrier of the textbooks, that the others are the Professor Chase, not of the textbooks. As to most of us, the symbols of the infinitesimal calculus humbled independent thinking into the conviction that used to be enforced by drops of blood from a statue in the farrago and conflicts of daily lives. It is a relief to feel such a rapport with finality in a religious sense or in a mathematical sense. So then, if the seeming of exactness in astronomy be either infamously or carelessly and laughingly brought about by the conveniences of which Swift and Watson were accused, and if the prestige of astronomy be founded upon nothing but huge capital letters and exclamation points, or upon the disproportionality of balancing one Leverrier against hundreds of Chases, it may not be better that we should know this. If then to those of us who, in the religious sense, have nothing to depend upon, comes deprivation of even this last lingering seeming of foundation, or seeming existence of exactness and realness somewhere, except that if there be nearby lands in the sky and being from foreign worlds that visit this earth, that is a great subject, and the trash that is clogging an epoch must be cleared away. We have had a little sermon upon the insecurity of human triumphs, and having brought it to a climax, now seems to be the time to stop. But there is still an involved triumph, and I'd not like to have inefficiency, as well as probably everything else, charged against us. The discovery of Uranus. We mentioned the stimulus to the textbook writer's ecstasies because out of the phenomena of the planet Uranus, the Neptune triumph developed. For Richard Proctor's reasons for arguing that this discovery was not accidental, see Old and New Astronomy, page 646, Philosophical Transactions 71-492, a paper by Herschel, an account of a comet discovered on March 13, 1781. A year went by, and not an astronomer in the world knew a new planet when he saw one. Then Lexell did find out that the supposed comet was a planet, statues from which used to drip the lifeblood of a parasitic cult, structures of parabolas from which bleed equations. As we go along, we shall develop the acceptance that astronomers might as well try to squeeze blood from images as to try to seduce symbols into conclusions, because applicable mathematics has no more to do with the planetary interactions than have statues of saints. If this denial that the calculi have placed in gravitational astronomy be accepted, the astronomers lose their supposed God. They become an unfocused priesthood. The stamina of their arrogance wilts. We begin with the next to the simplest problem in celestial mechanics. That is, the formulation of the interactions of the sun and the moon and this earth. In the highest of mathematics, final, sacred mathematics, can this next to the simplest problem in so-called mathematical astronomy be solved? It cannot be solved. Every now and then somebody announces that he has solved the problem of the three bodies, but it is always an incomplete or impressionistic demonstration compounded of abstractions and ignoring the conditions of bodies in space. Over and over, we shall find vacancy under supposed achievements, elaborate structures that are pretensions without foundation. Here we learn that astronomers cannot formulate the interactions of three bodies in space, but calculate anyway and publish what they call the formula of the planet that is interacting with 1,000 other bodies. They explain it will be one of our most lasting impressions of astronomers. They explain and explain and explain. The astronomers explain that, though in finer terms the mutual effects of three planets cannot be determined, so dominant is the power of the sun that all other effects are negligible. For the discovery of Uranus, there was no way by which the miracles of the astro-magicians could be tested. They said that their formulas worked out, and external inquiry was panic-stricken at the mention of a formula. But Uranus was discovered, and the magicians were called upon to calculate his path. They did calculate, and if Uranus had moved in a regular path, I do not mean to say that astronomers or college boys have no mathematics by which to determine anything so simple. They computed the orbit of Uranus. He went somewhere else. They explained. They computed some more. They went on explaining and computing year in and year out, and the planet Uranus kept on going somewhere else. Then they conceived of a powerful perturbing force beyond Uranus. So then that at the distance of Uranus, the sun is not so dominant, in which case the effects of Saturn upon Uranus and Uranus upon Saturn are not so negligible. Although on through complexes of interactions that infinitely intensify by cumulativeness into a black onlook for the whole brilliant system. The paleo astronomers calculated and for more than 50 years pointed variously at Variously? Yeah, variously at the sky. Finally, two of them, of course, agreeing upon the general background of Uranus, pointed within distances that are conventionally supposed to have been about 600 millions of miles of Neptune, and now it is religiously, if not insolently, said that the discovery of Neptune was not accidental. That the test of that which is not accidental is ability to do it again. That it is within the power of anybody who does not know a hyperbola from a cosine to find out whether the astronomers are led by a cloud of rubbish by day and a pillar of bosh by night. If, by the magic of his mathematics, any astronomer could have pointed to the position of Neptune, let him point to the planet past Neptune, according to the same reasoning by which a planet past Uranus was supposed to be. A trans-Neptunian planet may be supposed to be. Neptune shows perturbations similar to those of Uranus. According to Professor Todd, there is such a planet, and it revolves around the sun once in 375 years. There are two, according to Professor Forbes, one revolving once in 1,000 years and the other once in 5,000 years. See Macpherson's Centuries Progress in Astronomy. It exists according to Dr. Eric Doolittle and revolves once in 283 years. According to Mr. Hind, it revolves once in 1,600 years. So then we have found out some things, and relatively to the oppressions that we felt from our opposition, they are reassuring. But also they are depressing, because if in this existence of ours there is no prestige higher than that of astronomic science, and if the seeming of substantial renown has been achieved by a composition of bubbles, what of anything like soundness must there be to all lesser reputes and achievements? Let three bodies interact. There is no calculus by which their interactions can be formulated, but there are 1,000 interacting bodies in this solar system, or supposed solar system, and we find that the highest prestige in our existence is built upon the tangled assertions that there are magicians who can compute in 1,000 quantities, though they cannot compute in three. And all other so-called human triumphs are moderate successes, products of anybody's reasoning, processes, and labors. And what are they, if higher than them all, more academic, austere, rigorous, exact are the methods and the processes of the astronomers? What can be thought of our whole existence, its nature, and its destiny? That our existence, a thing within one solar system, or supposed solar system, is a stricken thing that is mooling through space, shockingly able-minded, healthy systems with the sores of its sun, its ghastly moons, its civilizations that are all broken out, with sciences, a celestial leper, holding out doddering expanses into which charitable systems drop golden comets. If it be the leprous thing that our findings seem to indicate, there is no encouragement for us to go on. We cannot discover, we can only betray new symptoms. If I be part of such a stricken thing, I know of nothing but sickness and sores and rags to reason with. My data will be pustules. My interpretations will be inflammations.